So it's taken all that good information that John just described there, the BIM information, the product families and the digitisation of that information and putting it into effectively a pattern book of house types. So, you know, how can we optimise house types that embrace all of these things that are suitable for the affordable market? It was predominantly led by L&Q and Stewart Milne Group, with a view of maybe exploitation on our current sites, live sites, through remixing these new homes, and also making them available to third parties through Donaldson Timber systems under a sort of free-to-use licence agreement for third parties to use. So this is quite a lengthy process. This took us about 18 months to do this. First of all, we had to set up a design brief of what does the house range look like for what is appropriate for L&Q's business needs, what is appropriate for Stewart Milne's business needs, and we put in some basic parameters in there. You know, a UK range would be good, built-in design options, elevations that can be provided, a degree of flexibility that could be plotted in any house type, and also technical specifications such as heat pump ready, fabric first approach, minimum 55% pre-manufactured value, suitable for June 22 incoming regs, etc. So we put that in place, and it's good to have a design brief so you know what you're designing to, because quite often we start designing stuff because we like to draw houses without really understanding what the design brief. So we went through 4 or 5 iterations of that before we were able to lock it down. And from that we also took on board some competitor analysis. We went out to the market from publicly available information on planning websites and on general websites, sales websites, and looked at a range of different providers out there on house types. So L&Q assessed effectively 52 house designs in their sort of operating areas. We did something similar at Stewart Milne across a range of different developers who are providing homes. What does good look like? What does bad look like? And sort of plagiarise a little bit. You know, that's a good thing. You know, we can all learn from each other. So we kind of took that, and some of the analysis gave us a view of where the house range needed to sit, what was good ones. We also looked at space standards. So obviously a key thing in the affordable sector, because this is focused at affordable, is compliance with NDSS, or at least 85% of the floor area of NDSS, so you can secure Homes for England funding. So again, we looked at the footprints, and we had a sort of coding system at the bottom in green and red, which kind of showed where people were compliant and where people weren't compliant, and it gave us a bit of a scattergun approach to where actually compliant homes work and where non-compliant homes rest. So that analysis then fed into the final design of the house range. There's 18 house types effectively for Stewart Milne, wider church of house types, just to suit the wider market dynamic through Donaldson's and through the group. So we included also cottage flats, so it's a 2-storey cottage flats. It can be bolted onto the end of a terrace, full wheelchair bungalow flats, and your common terraces of 2, 3 and 4 bed homes. L&Q had 6 primarily as our basis to start from. There will be further house types developed over the portfolio in due course, and we'll take the learning from that going forward. So we've got a collection of house types that's appropriate for both the developers to use. The colour coding on the left is the Stewart Milne range, where we've got green, which are fully NDSS compliant, but we understand to be competitive in the marketplace you don't always have to have the larger footprint. So from research with Homes England, and we met with them a number of times, we were able to ascertain that from a funding point of view, they will fund up to 85% of this floor area of an NDSS. So everything that's in orange there is essentially a smaller unit. What that means is a slightly more challenging design than the larger units. So you've now got a portfolio of house types you can be plotted wherever the customer is looking for that space standard compliance. Really detailed design programme, because you'd expect with these things you have to manage a process, and we then went through a process of concept design, DFMA input, BIM calculations, production design, iteration after iteration, and then obviously the technical validation, SAP validation, overheating calcs, technical detailing, cost, build programmes to actually produce the full suite of production information that we can take to market. And we're essentially challenging ourselves to produce 3 homes every sort of 3 weeks in that cycle, which is actually quite a long programme of activity to manage and actually put in place to develop this. A lot of time going in to actually develop the specifics of the range.
Sorry, where are we? So that is the live design project. Where are we now?
So we have got all 18 and all 6 modelled. So we're here. So we're at this point. So we're actually at the end of the cycle. They're all available. In terms of launching them into the marketplace, we're looking to launch, which is the last line there. Here we'll complete our type approvals, our final SAP calcs, with a view to launching these into live sites from sort of spring, summer this year. An awful lot of work, an awful lot of drawing, by the way. Weekly meetings, and but it's that sort of planned approach. Beat it out till you get to the point of that. But the key thing is you start with a concept design. So we take all that information from our competitor analysis, what does good look like, etc. We come up with the sort of footprints we think are the right sort of designs for both examples here on sort of a 2-bedroom house, a cottage flat as well, and then a sort of bungalow. We started colour coding the different furniture layouts and the compliance requirements for NDSS to make sure we've got the right access requirements and the footprint so they all comply with furniture layouts. We also looked at a UK wider range, so you've got housing for varying needs. In Scotland, which is a slightly different standard to the national design spatial standards in England, to ensure that we've actually got a range of house types that can comply with both sides of the border, which I think is quite a unique sort of thing as well. So just making sure that all of those things work. So you're looking at storage sizes, bed space sizes, areas around about bed spaces, area around about sanitary wares, all that sort of stuff that needs to be designed into these things. So a number of iterations going through here to hone that design and to tweak it to make sure it's the most efficient design from a land take point of view and from an output compliance point of view. At that point we start building in the standard product families. So since we've got 5 standard windows, we've got one door, we've got 3 plot depths. Plot depths are really important because efficiency of sort of narrow fronted and sort of deeper orientated units are typically at a more commercially viable solution than a wide fronted house that takes a lot of land and eats into land space. So there's a balance between having a range of house types that suit some of those wider fronted and narrower fronted ones. But the key thing here is on the left is we've only 3 depths of homes. So one of the things we standardise is of the 18 house types within Stewart Milne's portfolio, there's only 3 depths. They're all brick coordinated. What that means is you can bolt them together really efficiently and all the roof lines work and the houses can be connected when you put them as a terrace, because predominantly affordable home is built in terraces or semi-type configurations. So it's a really important thing to get right. And then the bathrooms there. Again, the bathrooms in the bottom, we've got 2 options. It's the same layout, but actually you can have a wet room or you can have a shower space. So if you're an RSL and you have a particular need on a house type to say a wet room area, which is just essentially a trap in the floor, you can do that because there might be an ambulant disabled person, or you can actually put a shower unit in as well. So the same footprint works for both those options and it gives that flexibility. It's already pre-designed into the house type to suit that particular person who might be renting or using that home going forward. The DFMA bit that John described is an example, same as on his slides about optimising the floor cassettes. So one of the key things here is making sure the load-bearing lines are consistent. And with the floor cassettes, with the technology and the manufacturing technology, you saw with the automated line, what it's not very good at is putting beams within floors in an automated line. That's a no-no, because actually you don't get the efficiencies of manufacture. That would mean that panel, that floor cassette would need to be manually made in this dedicated work centre itself. So all of these houses are designed effectively with the floor cassette flying over the wall. So it's a downstand beam if you've got an open plan area, or you've got a blue line in the middle where you've optimised the load bearing paths. All the stairs are actually on the NDSS are straight flight, so we don't have any winders at all, so they're more efficient to build. There's no winders. It's quite a good idea for the rental market as well, because they're quite easy to replace and maintain as an asset going forward. You can get your furniture up and down the house, for example, rather than putting a double winder in. And then if there's any recesses, this one here's got a little feature recess at the front, then it's optimised to ensure you can build it and you can carry the brickwork above it and you're not putting any special steel work in or anything complicated to support that fenestration finish. So all of that stuff that was in the guide is brought forward in that and designed into these house types. And then we've essentially got a range of house types that ultimately come out of the sausage machine at the end of that. This has all been led with a group design technical team at L&Q and Stewart Milne, who are really specialists in these sort of things. So we can now got a range of footprints and house designs which are compliant. We know the size of them, the square footage of them. We know the customer options that are pre-configured, so you've got options here where you've got wardrobe spaces if you want to build them in. You can actually accommodate a heat pump in the future, so every house is designed with potential for a thermal store. So if you've got a gas boiler at the moment, you put the gas boiler in, but actually if you want to retrofit it, you could actually take out the gas boiler, put the heat pump in without actually changing that house type. Or you could just go heat pump now with a cylinder straight away, and that house will be able to take it as well. So just some examples. Cottage flats, quite an interesting one. So you've got a flat on the ground floor, a flat on the first floor. Quite common in Scotland, less so in England, but it's a very efficient design to do, where you get the optimisation of putting the stair to the access the first floor within the footprint of the building. So we're not having a stair bolted on the side. It's more land efficient and inefficient and complex to build. And also it gives you flexibility in your street scenes where you've got more gable ends and front ends for your corner turner, so you get the sense of place and you get more of that characteristic feel and the sense of place. Also bungalows, because there is a need to ensure that quite through a number of the planning authorities now there's a requirement to plot bungalows. They're not the most efficient, so you need to plot them sparingly, but we've made it as efficient as it can be, either as a standalone or as a semi-detached bungalow with full wheelchair compliant access on this particular one. Looked at overheating and things like that, so we're not building any problems with super insulated homes that could overheat. We've done a lot of overheating analysis, particularly on bungalows and flats where you've got a ground floor bedroom, and obviously to cool the house at night time or during the day you normally open the windows. That can be a problem for security if you're on the ground floor of that building where you can't open up and you're scared about somebody obviously coming in to break into your house or style. So looked at these things as well to make sure that there's no long-term implications of overheating and what our mitigation strategies would be. And then plotting them all together is making sure that the house range bolt together. As I said, one of the key things is given that street scene and that variability. We're very conscious of the whole placemaking agenda and the need to make sure that these are appropriate and proper houses. So they're very efficient to connect together. The image on the end here is essentially an end turner, so you can have a corner turner where you've got a turn round into a particular cul-de-sac or a junction, so you can elevate that elevation as well, which is good from a planning point of view. You've got the material breaks on the left, which are predetermined, so the different colours there, the sort of reds and the oranges, show where you can break materials. You can have renders, you can have different colours of brick, you can have timber cladding, different sort of features. But the break points are all known, they're all pre-designed in, so you're just effectively using your sort of material palette to elevate the house, to bring it into character on the street. One of the clever things is where we've got the two-bed, where we've got the cottage flats, so the image in the bottom, in the middle there. Cottage flats mating onto a house. Typically you've got a deeper floor in a flat because you've got an acoustic requirement between the flat above and the flat below. So you've got a deeper floor. So you need to think about, I've got a deep floor in my flat and I've got a shallow floor in my house. But I still want it to line through in terms of my fascia lines, my roof lines and everything else, my window heads, my sill courses, etc. So the flats are designed with a slightly reduced ceiling height. It's the only area where we cut plasterboard is 2.3, everything else is a standard 2.4 plasterboard material size. But actually the benefit of doing that is a slight cost to pay in terms of the material, but the simplicity of the elevation and the fact you've now got essentially a co-planing house type is worth far more. Simple scaffolding, simple roof designs. And if you imagine we're looking at PV in the future, you're looking at your roof designs, the more we can simplify the roofs, the more we can do them on the ground, the more we can put them up, then the easier it is to build. Then obviously more efficient it becomes. And then just finally on the elevation, I've talked about taking some material cues and how we can elevate house types. We've actually got some pre-configured, I think there's 4 pre-configured elevations that we can use to suit different sort of regional finishes. We've got an all brick design, which is typically an English type detail with sort of feature brick coursing. You've also got a more contemporary design where you've maybe got your sort of grey windows and more contemporary architecture, a bit like what you see in maybe Cambridge area. Scotland, we've got a few stone houses, so you've got a few stone and render type solutions as well, so you can actually create quite a variety. We don't have the latest CGI images, but we've got CGI images being developed for each one of the house types and each one of the images to actually showcase how these can be brought forward, so it's a bit more visual than what I'm showing you here today. But you can see how we can break up the elevations to create exactly the same timber frame shell, but actually looks quite different depending where you want to live. And then the heart of all of this is the Bim modeling that John's talked about. It's not a software, there's a process. However, all of these house types are modelled in Bim, so the timber frame and the MMC panelised systems are federated into the model. So we've done them on the 3D Consultech software and then modelled it into Revit as well. We've done the clash detection on it to make sure the service runs are going through, the heating pipes and all that sort of stuff as well, to ensure you've got a federated model. And that BIM models are essentially what we'd take to market. So if the customer wants to use them, you have a full BIM model with all the information there. And within that there'll be some preferred suppliers, so your heating design will be there, your boiler design will be there from a range of boiler or heating designers that are available to you, to that developer who wants to build that house in the future. So just finally, I'm not sure if that QR code works, but if you want to point your smartphone at that QR code, I'm not sure if it works at distance, but give it a clue. Put the thing will come up, and then you should actually get a fly through in your phone. So yeah, point it there, and you'll get this image come up, and you can walk down the street scene. I'm not sure if it works on a PowerPoint slide, but if I did it here, I'd probably get it, and you can actually bring it up on your phone just now, and you'll get a bit of a street scene of what a potential image would look like. Did it work, Sam? Did it?
I think it's working.
Is it working? Is it working? Hey! So yeah, so you can just begin to see how it would visualise. You know, that's a more contemporary. You can show it around people if you want to see it. So that's using BIM. So that's basically the BIM through Enscape, which is a visualisation tool. So you can hit the QR code, it'll bring it up. You know, you could then customise that street design, one of a Manchester one or a timber one in Scotland, or whatever sort of fenestration you look at. But actually, you can generate these images and actually bring it straight up on your phone and things like that to do that. Ultimately, we can do a few fly-throughs as well and things like that. And if you actually go on the website, EMCH website, there is a flash-through of how some of these house types could be plotted on a development coming your way. So to conclude, really, this has been a great piece of work. So from an L&Q point of view and a Stewart Milne Homes point of view, we're already looking to use our new house designs and plot them on live developments. I know from a Stewart Milne point of view, with 550 affordable homes plotted over the next 5 years, that we're remixing into live developments where possible to bring in the new homes, because they're far more efficient to build than what we were previously building. And through Donaldson's and obviously Stewart Milne Timber Systems, now Donaldson Timber Systems, the pattern book's going to be made available for third parties, so SMEs, new entrants, people who don't have the technical horsepower, don't have the skill sets to understand all of this stuff. You can actually just have a pre-configured house range that you can use on your development. Might suit rural developments, small developers and larger ones, but have the efficiencies of manufacturing the same house every day, building the same house every sort of day, but elevating it is kind of where it is, taking out cost in terms of architectural fees, and the technical aspects of the home. You still need your architect to plot them on the site to get planning consents. You still need a builder to effectively build them for you, put in the roads, put in the foundations. But in return for buying effectively a closed panel MMC system from Donaldson's, you get a free house. Okay, so thank you for that. John, we'll take any questions now. Welcome.
That was fascinating, I must say. I know absolutely nothing about housing design, but I do occupy one.
Yeah.
And you didn't mention the occupier at all. I wondered if you'd actually sought the views of occupiers as to how the design might best suit them.
We spoke a lot to the housing association people who manage assets going forward and said, you know, what works for you in terms of what your residents need from a home to ensure that they're worthwhile. And you know, most of these take that feedback on board. Simplicity is key. You know, space is key, efficiency is key. We've not gone out and done any private, you know, engagement or focus groups or stuff like that. We're pretty comfortable that the designs of the homes will be acceptable. We've looked at things like overheating potential in the long term and the potential problems with that, because we are pushing the fabric and we've got that closed panel, fairly well insulated timber frame to ensure that from a technical point of view that there's not going to be any recurrence there. But yeah, until we build a few and we get some feedback, we'll soon see, I guess.
I was just going to do a reminder to yourself, Stuart, it's from you, we were told this, that the other part about the house types, they're not, you know, we didn't go out and take an architect or a team, Stuart, to go out and design some houses. The houses were picked from those, or adapted from those reviews. Most of them already in bed 10 to 15 years, and Stuart knows this is very true, of building them, getting surveys back from end users, tweaking them. So they've already got about 10 to 15 years of learning in them. So I'd like to think at this point, they're always going to evolve, fashions and things change, but at this point they're probably quite refined in terms of those end user feedback loops. So it hasn't been done as a standalone, let's build some houses or design some. And I'm aware in the MMC market there's a few who've done that, let's just start from scratch. No. These are, start with the design first. What are people living in now and make the MMC suit what they want rather than the other way around? Would that be a fair
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. I think that's part of the benefit of having, you know, within Stewart Milne Group. We've been very proud of that for 40 years, working with a house builder as part of an MMC provider, because we've got exactly that. And there's I think unashamedly, you know, in the private house building market, people are very, very focused on things like Stuart said, like plotting efficiency and land efficiency, but also getting that feedback of how we design homes. We get that customer feedback when we know what sells. So I think all that's fed in. But yeah, I think they're there, they're done, but they're never fixed. They're never going to be fixed. They'll always evolve, and we'll get that feedback. And part of the agreement we've got between us as Donaldson's going forward, selling this to the external market, and with Stewart Milne, it's still their own house range, is we'll still share that feedback that we get from other developers and other people's views as well. So they will evolve. We'll definitely feedback. We've never got it bang on right first time.
One of the things that isn't quite obvious on there, but is the land efficiency side of it. You know, as a commercially focused house builder, the houses are very land efficient, but not detrimental to the design and layout and functionality of the home sort of still, but efficient. So we know that we've got a thing called a land generator that basically you rank your house types on, you know where you sit, and there's a certain percentage threshold that you need to do, and that becomes, you know, the most efficient way of doing it. And all of these house types have that built in mind. When we see some of the other house types that we analysed, they're not that land efficient, because they may be designed by a third party, an architect. I'm not having to go architects, but they will always be as efficient as what a private developer would think about when they're looking at land efficiency. They might be architecturally well designed or considered to be well designed, but they'll be land hungry. They'll be wide. If they're wider, they take more land. If they take more land, they take more roads, they take more footpaths, they take more everything. It costs more money. So sort of the house range is designed to be not necessarily narrow, but efficient in terms of the size and the depth. It's a key metric in any developer's world that you exist. And it's just transferring that knowledge into those who don't have that knowledge currently to buy a house range that's already got that built in. Conscious of time, Sam, do you want the final question or any question?
Yeah. Well, obviously, in terms of the pattern book, you're at a certain stage, you haven't fully launched. I think you mentioned that you're going to open source it, essentially.
Yeah.
Is that like full open source, so there's just no copyright issues, anything that you publish can
It's
be
open source on the basis that you buy a Stewart Milne timber frame.
There's more of a license then?
So it's,
Yes,
it's a sort of license agreement. So in return for using a timber frame MMC system, you can have the information open source. Now, in the future, it might become, once that person's got it, they could copyright and start to plagiarise it and do it in the future. That's one of the risks, but maybe that's not a bad thing.
So once you're out there, you've launched and all that,
Yeah.
if you find people are just making something that is exactly what you've designed, are they breaking rules?
We've taken legal advice on this to make sure that is the case, to protect some IP, but also you need to encourage people to use the pattern book as well. So there's a balancing act there as well. So yes, there will be copyright clauses in it that, you know, technically we could go for them if they did that sort of stuff. Whether we would ever do that, not too sure.
Reality is, I think we all know that there's only so much you can do to a 3-bed house, and reality is if somebody's going to take it, if they think they're infringing that copyright, you know, the reality is we know that they can move a wall, they can make the house 50 mil wider or whatever, and they can say it's their own. So, and as much as we would like to control it, and that we've put the work in, I think as Stuart mentioned, it's for the reality is if we've got there and we get market advantage for a couple of years before people start to copy it, and if it is very efficient, then so be it.
One of the things.
Yeah, and I think it's it's a bit of a unique offering that we're trying to put out in the market. Is, you know, we've been closely linked with the house builder for 40 years, and it's just that there's a lot of the housing associations and the smaller sort of RPs that we work with that just don't have that technical expertise anymore, and they've got to outsource it. So, you know, we've got an option to say, well, you could go and design it, engage an architect, design a house range, and start from scratch, or we've got one here that we think is up and ready, it does all the compliance it needs to. So I think there's the feedback we've had, there's a lot of people who are quite interested, and we get asked already of, do you have a standard house range that you could offer us? So that's what we're
And
trying to get.
the range in the BIM models effectively is built around about the Sigma 2 closed panel systems, the AMC8 system. So, you know, you'd have to then stretch the build. You know, if you're going to drop in another MMC system, it might be more difficult. Maybe in the future, another competitor has their pattern book and somebody else has their pattern book, and then there's maybe an opportunity to coalesce around about a sort of common pattern book that the industry can use.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask about.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there'll be a number of others out there,
Yeah.
and I think we're seeing quite a flourishing of options. And
Yeah.
you know, we're at a certain point in this whole sort of evolutionary journey in terms of, you know, whatever it is, Urban Splash and Sekisui doing
Yeah.
their thing, Top Hat no doubt have got their thing. There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll, you know, to my mind, it's a fantastic sort of.
I think on those ones you've mentioned, where you're going the modular MMC route, you kind of need to have that pre-described house type because you're actually doing so much of the work in the factory.
Yeah.
You need to control it. From the panelised MMC system, you know, the timber frame element is only probably a 20% of the total cost of the house. So what you've now got is an offering in the marketplace that actually says, you know, you can take this and actually put in your own, you know, you can do your own things with it. Still means that some of it will be on site, but the majority will come as a pre-manufactured shell that you can actually complete and finish off yourself with your own contractors, your own subcontractor, your own preferred materials and everything else. Because one of the challenges I think if it's a modular is you come up with your own house type and you say, well, you know, that RSL might want to use a Baxi boiler, but the modular guy says we're getting a Worcester Boss boiler or something like that because that's efficient for them to procure those components, put them into a shell and then offer that. But that might not be what the customer actually wants because they have to now change their assets and their management systems, etc. Say, well, now I'm being forced to use a Worcester Bosch, but for the last 20 years I've been using a Baxi sort of style. So with this option, it gives them that flexibility, you know, to say that within the shell, there's no change, but you can actually, all the components within that, you can actually design to suit what your supply chain is, what you want to do going forward.
One simple question. You mentioned 55% PMV target, and obviously it's going to depend a little bit on the facade types and this, that and the
Yeah.
other. What's the upper range that you think you'll get in terms of PMV?
So on the closed panel, ground direct roof, chipboard clad cassettes, we're about the 55%. We've commissioned Mark Farmer and his team. We're doing that modelling as we speak. Peter here is leading the PMV calculations. So by the end of the project, we'll have that done for the range of house types we're looking at. So we think we're about that. We don't know for certain, but we think we're on the money there. If you put in a prefabricated foundation, it'll probably get you to high 58, 59s. If you then drop in a bathroom pod and consider some kind of cladding system, I think I can get you to 61, 62, 65. I think the maximum you can get in a modular system is 70% PMV. You know, pretty much you're maxed out there. So you've now got a panelised system. If you go hybrid pod and panel, or panelised with a foundation, that's getting you pretty close to the same PMV as a modular market.